The space around Earth turned dark as the massive alien ship dropped out of hyperspace. The ship was bigger than any human city, its black metal surface covered with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Red lights pulsed along its sides like the heartbeat of some giant beast. This was the Eternal Dominion, the pride of the Galactic Coalition's warfleet. Captain Kim Tae-ho was drinking his morning coffee aboard the space station New Seoul when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his cup and rushed to the command center, where his officers stared at their screens with wide eyes. The alien ship was so large it blocked out the stars behind it. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said his communications officer, her voice shaking. "It's coming from that thing." "Put it on the main screen," Kim Tae-ho ordered. The screen flickered and showed a creature that looked like a giant lizard walking on two legs. Its scales were dark green and its yellow eyes burned with cold intelligence. Sharp teeth showed when it spoke. "I am Admiral Veltareth of the Sorok Empire," the alien said. Its voice was deep and threatening. "I speak for the Galactic Coalition. You primitive humans have 72 hours to surrender completely. You will give us all your colony worlds. You will accept our rule. If you refuse, we will destroy every human in the galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in deadly silence. Kim Tae-ho had fought in many battles during his 20 years in the Earth Defense Force. He had seen pirates, rebels, and corporate wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien ship outside could probably destroy their entire defense fleet without breaking a sweat. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he said. "Emergency priority." Down on Earth, in the underground bunker that served as the planet's main defense center, Prime Defense Coordinator Park So-jin was already calling an emergency meeting. Leaders from every major nation and colony were connecting through quantum communication links. The room filled with worried voices speaking in dozens of languages. "The alien fleet has over 300 ships," reported General Martinez from the Mars colony. "Our scouts count at least 50 dreadnoughts. We have maybe 30 ships that could stand up to one of their smaller vessels." "What about the orbital defense platforms?" asked someone from the Luna base. "They took those out first," said Admiral Chen from the outer colonies. "Just vaporized them, like they were toys." Park So-jin studied the tactical display floating above the conference table. Red dots marked coalition ships throughout human space. They had surrounded every human world, every space station, every mining operation. It was a perfect trap. "Need to discuss our options," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Military resistance seems impossible. Maybe we should consider negotiation." The room erupted in angry voices. Some leaders demanded they fight to the last ship. Others argued for immediate surrender to save lives. A few suggested evacuating Earth and fleeing to unknown space. Park So-jin let them argue. They needed to vent their fear and anger. But she was thinking about something else entirely. 3 days ago, she had received a message that was coded with security clearances she didn't even know existed. The message had come from someone called Lee Dong-woo, and it contained coordinates to a location deep in the Pacific Ocean. While the leaders argued above ground, far below the ocean waves, Lee Dong-woo stood in a chamber that should not exist. The room was carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing with soft blue energy. In the center of the chamber stood a pillar made of crystal that reached from floor to ceiling. Lee Dong-woo was old, maybe 70, with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent his whole life studying ancient mysteries that most people thought were just stories. Now he stood before technology that was older than human civilization. "Initiate first stage activation," he said to the empty air. The crystal pillar began to pulse with brighter light. The symbols on the walls started to move, flowing like liquid fire. Deep in the earth, something that had been sleeping for thousands of years began to wake up. Back on the space station, Kim Tae-ho received new orders from Earth Command. All human ships were to pull back to defensive positions around their home worlds. No aggressive action was to be taken. They were buying time, hoping to find a diplomatic solution. But Kim Tae-ho noticed something strange. The retreat orders came with hidden codes that told a different story. Ships weren't really retreating. They were moving to positions that looked defensive, but were actually something else entirely. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Veltereth reviewed intelligence reports about the humans. They were a young species, barely 50 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to Coalition standards. They still used chemical rockets for some of their ships. Their weapons were simple projectiles and basic energy beams. They fight among themselves constantly, reported his intelligence officer, a thin gray alien with large black eyes. Their planet is divided into hundreds of different nations. They wage war over resources, territory, and ideology. They are emotional and irrational. Perfect, Veltereth said, showing his sharp teeth. Emotional species break easily under pressure. They will surrender long before the 72 hours expire. But even as he spoke, Admiral Veltereth felt a strange unease. His ship's sensors kept detecting odd energy readings from Earth. Nothing threatening, just unusual. Like background radiation that didn't quite make sense. "What are those readings from the planet?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. Possibly some kind of industrial activity. Their technology is too primitive to pose any threat." In the depths of the Pacific, Lee Dongwu watched as more crystal pillars began to glow. Ancient machinery hummed to life with a sound that seemed to come from the planet itself. The air in the chamber grew thick with energy that made his skin tingle. He thought about the message he had sent to Park So-jin. He had been the keeper of Earth's deepest secrets for 40 years, following in the footsteps of his teacher and her teacher before that. The knowledge had been passed down through generations of guardians who waited for the day when it would be needed. That day had come. Young Han Yu-jin, his student and assistant, emerged from a side tunnel carrying an armload of data tablets. She was 25, brilliant, and completely unprepared for what they were about to unleash. "Master Lee, the satellite feeds show Coalition ships moving into attack formation," she said. "Are you sure about this? What if we're wrong about what these systems can do?" Lee Dongwu smiled at her concern. "Yu-jin, I have studied these chambers my entire life. My teacher studied them for 70 years before me. We are not wrong. The question is whether humanity is ready for the truth." Above, them far above in space, the Coalition fleet waited like a storm cloud. Admiral Veltereth was confident in his overwhelming advantage. 300 advanced warships against a few dozen primitive human vessels. It would be the shortest war in galactic history. He did not know that deep beneath Earth's oceans, something was stirring that had been old when his species was still learning to make fire. Something that had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. The 72-hour countdown had begun, but the real timer had been running for 10,000 years, and it was almost at zero. The first day of the countdown passed in what looked like complete chaos. Human colonies across the galaxy sent out desperate messages begging for help. Ships loaded with refugees fled from the outer settlements, their distress calls filling the communication channels with panic and fear. Choi Min-ho commanded the human expeditionary fleet from his flagship Soul's Pride. To anyone watching, his fleet looked like it was running away as fast as possible. His ships moved in scattered groups, appearing confused and disorganized. Coalition scouts followed them easily, reporting back that the humans were in full retreat. "Signal the Busan warrior to increase engine output," Choi Min-ho told his communications officer. "Make sure they detect our exhaust signature. I want them to think we're pushing our engines beyond safe limits." The truth was very different. Choi Min-ho's ships were not fleeing in panic. They were moving to carefully planned positions throughout human space. Each ship carried cargo that the Coalition scanners could not detect. Old cargo. Important cargo, Henri. Earth Kim Soo-yeon worked in a laboratory hidden beneath the city of Seoul. She was the planet's chief xenobiologist, an expert on alien life forms. But today she was studying files that had nothing to do with aliens. These files contained information about humanity itself, information that most people on Earth did not know. The files told a story that began long before recorded history, before the pyramids, before agriculture, before humans even learned to make fire. The story of what Earth really was, and what humans really were. "The genetic markers are clear," she said to her assistant, pointing at the data on her screen. Modern humans carry DNA sequences that don't match any evolutionary path we've traced. It's like someone added new code to our genetic structure. Her assistant, a young man named Park Jin-woo, frowned at the data. Are you saying humans were genetically modified? Not modified, Kim Soo-yeon said. Created, or rather guided. Something helped our species develop in specific ways. Something that wanted us to be more than just another animal species. In the coalition fleet, Admiral Veltereth grew more confident with each passing hour. Human ships continued to flee. Human colonies were being abandoned. Intercepted communications showed human leaders arguing with each other, unable to agree on any response strategy. They are already defeated, he told his staff officers. Their spirit is broken, we may not even need to fire a shot. His intelligence officer, Krikstal, reported on the human retreat. Our scouts have entered 17 abandoned human outposts. They stripped out everything of value before leaving. Computers, weapons, supplies. They even took the furniture. Typical prey behavior, Veltereth said. They are trying to salvage what they can before the inevitable. What Krikstal did not report was that the abandoned outposts made him nervous. They were too clean, too empty, almost like they had been prepared for abandonment long before the coalition arrived. And the energy readings from some of the structures suggested they were still running systems that should have been shut down. Deep in the Pacific, the ancient chamber filled with more activity. Han Yujin moved between control panels that seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. The technology was beyond anything human science could explain, yet somehow it felt familiar to her. Master Li, the awakening process is accelerating, she reported. I'm reading energy patterns from locations all over the planet. The network is much larger than we thought. Li Dongwu nodded as he studied readings that showed similar chambers activating on every continent. Under the Sahara Desert, beneath the ice of Antarctica, deep in the Amazon rainforest, in the mountains of Tibet. All over Earth, ancient systems were coming online. The builders were thorough, he said. They didn't just leave us guardians. They made the entire planet into a guardian. Meanwhile, Park So-jin found herself in the strange position of appearing to lead a chaotic defense effort while actually coordinating the most complex operation in human history. She had to make it. Looked like Earth's governments were in panic while secretly preparing for something the coalition could never imagine. The European Federation is demanding we surrender immediately, reported one of her aides. The African Union wants to negotiate. The American states are calling for a fight to the death, all according to plan. Good, Park So-jin said. Make sure the coalition intercepts all of those transmissions. They need to believe we are divided and helpless. The deception was working perfectly. Coalition forces moved freely through human space, occupying abandoned outposts and mining stations. They found no resistance, no traps, nothing but empty buildings and scattered supplies that the humans had apparently abandoned in their panic. But Yoon Jae-sung, monitoring the situation from a hidden facility in the Korean mountains, saw the truth. Every abandoned facility was actually a sensor station. Every refugee ship was carrying quantum communications equipment to its destination. The apparent retreat was actually the deployment of the largest surveillance network in galactic history. We can track every coalition ship in real time, he reported to Park So-jin. Their movement patterns, their weapon signatures, even their internal communications. They think they're hunting us, but we're watching their every move. Commander Nam Hye-jin of the Earth Defense Intelligence Division studied the personality, profiles of coalition leaders that her agents had compiled. Admiral Veltereth was aggressive but cautious. He preferred overwhelming force to minimize his own losses. The coalition's military doctrine favored quick, decisive battles against inferior opponents. They expect us to break, she told her team. Everything in their military history shows they've never faced an opponent who could match their technology. They win by being bigger and stronger, not by being smarter. So we let them think they're bigger and stronger, said her deputy, until it's too late for them to adapt. On the second day, human colonies began transmitting surrender offers. Some were genuine communications from civilians who were genuinely terrified. Others were carefully crafted messages designed to reinforce the coalition's belief that humanity was on the verge of collapse. Choi Min-ho's fleet had split into dozens of smaller groups, each one appearing to flee toward a different star system. Coalition scouts followed them all, reporting that human forces were scattered across hundreds of light years with no central coordination. "Perfect," Admiral Veltereth said when he received the reports. "Let them run. We will hunt them down, one group at a time. Within a month, there will be no human presence left in civilized space." But in the hidden chamber beneath the Pacific, Lee Dongwu watched as Earth itself began to change. The planet's magnetic field started to fluctuate in patterns that had not been seen for thousands of years. Deep ocean currents shifted. The auroras at the poles grew brighter and began to extend further toward the equator. "The planet is remembering," he told Han Yu-jin. "For 10,000 years these systems have been dormant. Now they are waking up and remembering what they were built to do." Han Yu-jin checked the readouts from monitoring stations around the world. "Master, the energy output is increasing exponentially. At this rate, the coalition's sensors will detect the changes within hours." "That's fine," Lee Dongwu said with a smile. "Let them detect it. By the time they understand what they're seeing, it will be far too late." In space, Kim Tae-ho received a coded transmission from Earth Command. The message was simple: "Prepare for Phase 3. Maintain defensive positions but be ready for rapid redeployment. The hunters are about to become the hunted." He looked out at the coalition fleet surrounding Earth. Hundreds of massive warships, each one capable of destroying a human city with a single shot. In a few hours, those ships would learn that they had not cornered a helpless prey species. They had walked into the den of something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. The attack began exactly 72 hours after Admiral Veltereth's ultimatum. Coalition ships moved into formation around Earth like a pack of wolves surrounding their prey, their weapons charged with energy that could melt mountains. Their shields glowed with power that could stop asteroids. "Begin the bombardment," Veltereth ordered from his command chair. "Target their orbital defenses first. Show them the futility of resistance." The first wave of plasma bolts streaked toward Earth's defense satellites. The weapons found their targets easily, turning the satellites into clouds of glowing metal. Human defenders fired back with their primitive missiles and energy beams, but their shots barely scratched the coalition's advanced shields. Kim Tae-ho watched from the space station New Seoul as Earth's outer defenses crumbled under the alien assault. His tactical display showed red alerts across the board. Orbital platforms destroyed, defense satellites offline. The planet's protective ring was falling apart. "Sir, we're getting evacuation orders," reported his communications officer. "All personnel are to abandon their stations and retreat to the surface." "Understood," Kim Tae-ho said, but he noticed something strange in the evacuation orders. Hidden codes told his people to leave their stations, but not to go far. They were supposed to wait for a signal he didn't understand yet. On Earth's surface, Yoon Jae-sung monitored the battle from a facility built into a mountain in central Korea. His screen showed coalition ships moving closer to Earth, their formation tightening like a noose. But other screens showed something the aliens could not see. Earth's magnetic field was doing impossible things. "The field strength is increasing by 300%, reported his assistant, staring at readings that made no scientific sense. "The field lines are reorganizing themselves. This shouldn't be possible." Yoon Jae-sung smiled grimly. "Possible or not, it's happening. Watch the aurora readings." High above Earth's poles, the beautiful lights of the aurora began to expand. Instead of staying near the magnetic poles like they had for thousands of years, the shimmering curtains of light began to spread toward the equator. Green and blue fire danced across the sky, growing brighter and more intense with each passing minute. Admiral Veltereth noticed the strange lights but dismissed them as some kind of atmospheric disturbance caused by his ship's weapons. He was more interested in the fact that human resistance had almost completely collapsed. "Prepare ground assault forces," he ordered. "We will take their capital cities and force their leaders to surrender in person. I want this finished by the end of the day." The first coalition transport ships began their descent through Earth's atmosphere. These were massive vessels carrying thousands of troops and heavy equipment. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. Land overwhelming force, capture the government, force surrender. The transports entered the upper atmosphere, without any problems. Their pilots reported normal conditions, clear skies, and no sign of human fighter craft. Earth lay below them like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. Then their engines stopped working. "What's happening?" demanded the transport commander as his ship began to drift instead of flying. "Engineering, report." "Sir, the engines are fine, but they're not responding to commands. It's like something is interfering with our power systems." "That's impossible. Our technology is shielded against all known forms of electromagnetic interference." But it was happening. One by one, coalition ships throughout the atmosphere found their engines shutting down. Not damaged, not destroyed, just turned off. Their life support systems continued working perfectly. Their communications still functioned. Only their weapons and engines had stopped responding. In the hidden chamber beneath the Pacific Ocean, Li Dongwu stood before a crystal pillar that now blazed with brilliant white light. Ancient symbols flowed across its surface like living, text writing and rewriting themselves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "The planet is awake," he told Han Yujin, who was staring at readings that showed impossible energy outputs from all over the world. "For the first time in 10,000 years, Earth is fully conscious." Han Yujin's hands shook as she tried to process what she was seeing. "Master Li, the energy patterns, they're not just coming from the chamber network, they're coming from everywhere. The ocean floors, the mountain ranges, even the deserts. It's like the entire planet is one giant machine." "Not a machine," Li Dongwu corrected gently. "A living system. The builders didn't just leave us guardians, they made Earth itself into a guardian. And now it's protecting its children." Above them, coalition ships found themselves trapped in Earth's atmosphere like flies in amber. They could move, but only slowly. Their weapons would not fire. Their shields flickered and died. And strangest of all, they could not leave. "Admiral, all atmospheric assault forces report the same problem," Krikstal told his commander. "Their ships are trapped. They can maintain altitude, but they cannot climb back to space. Something is holding them down." Admiral Veltereth stared at the tactical display in growing confusion and anger. His invasion force was stuck halfway between space and the planet's surface. His orbital ships could not get closer to Earth without risking the same fate, and the energy readings from the planet were becoming impossible to ignore. "What kind of technology can selectively disable our engines while leaving everything else intact?" he demanded. No one had an answer. On the planet's surface, Nam Hyejin activated communication systems that had been hidden for generations. She sent a message that reached every coalition ship simultaneously, transmitted on frequencies that should not have been able to penetrate their shielding. "Coalition forces, this is Earth Defense Command. You have entered our space with hostile intent and threatened our people with extinction. You believed we were weak because you misunderstood our nature." Her voice was calm and pleasant, like someone explaining a simple misunderstanding to a confused child. "We are not a warrior species. We did not achieve galactic travel through conquest. We are the children of gardeners, and gardeners understand how to deal with pests without destroying the garden." Admiral Veltereth tried to respond, but his communication systems would only receive. He could not transmit back to the planet. "Your ships are not damaged," Nam Hyejin continued. "Your crews are not in danger. Your life support systems will continue to function perfectly. But your weapons will not work in our space. Your engines will not carry you away until we decide to let you go." Park So-jin stood beside Nam Hyejin in the command center, watching as coalition ships throughout the solar system began to experience the same mysterious equipment failures. Ships that had been preparing to attack human colonies found their weapons offline. Vessels that tried to flee discovered their hyperspace drives would not engage. "How many of them are affected?" Park So-jin asked. "All of them," came the reply, from Yoon Jae-sung. "Every coalition ship within 10 light-years of Earth is experiencing selective system failures. Weapons offline, propulsion limited, communication restricted to receiving only." In space, Kim Tae-ho received new orders that finally made sense of the confusing signals he had been getting. Human ships that had appeared to retreat in panic were now moving back toward Earth. But they were not coming to fight. They were coming to help manage the situation. All human vessels maintain safe distances from coalition ships, came the broadcast from Earth Command. Do not approach closer than 1,000 kilometers. Our guests are experiencing technical difficulties and may be confused. Choi Min-ho's expeditionary fleet, which had spent the last 3 days appearing to run away in terror, suddenly appeared throughout human space. His ships moved with precision that made a mockery of their earlier apparent panic. They surrounded coalition vessels not as attackers, but as shepherds guiding a flock. Coalition forces, Choi Min-ho broadcast on all frequencies. Please remain calm. You are experiencing equipment malfunctions caused by your proximity to our homeworld. We are here to assist you and ensure your safety while these issues are resolved. Admiral Veltereth finally understood that he had been deceived from the very beginning. The human panic, the chaotic retreat, the abandoned colonies, all of it had been an elaborate performance. While his forces were chasing scattered human ships and occupying empty outposts, the humans had been setting up the largest trap in galactic history. But this was not a trap designed to destroy. It was a trap designed to teach. Deep beneath the Pacific, Han Yu-jin stared at readouts showing that Earth's energy output had stabilized at levels that should have been impossible for a natural planet. The ancient systems were not just functional. They were operating at full capacity for the first time in millennia. What happens now, Master Li? She asked. Li Dongwu watched the crystal pillar pulse with steady light, its ancient symbols now showing patterns of calm control rather than awakening fury. Now, he said, we show them what it means to be human, and we help them learn what they could become. 3 days had passed since Admiral Veltereth's fleet had been trapped around Earth. 3 days of impossible experiences that challenged everything the Coalition thought they knew about reality, consciousness, and power. Dr. Zethmar, the Coalition's top physicist, floated in the zero gravity of his research lab aboard the flagship, staring at readings that made him question his entire understanding of science. The energy patterns coming from Earth didn't follow any known laws of physics. They seemed to respond to observation, changing their behavior when someone was watching them. Admiral, he reported through the communication system that Earth allowed them to use, I've never seen anything like this. The planet isn't just using advanced technology, it's using principles that our science says should be impossible. Explain, Veltereth commanded, though his voice lacked its former authority. Everything about this situation had humbled him in ways he was still struggling to accept. The energy patterns show consciousness, sir, not artificial intelligence following programmed responses, but actual awareness. The planet is thinking, and somehow it's teaching our ships to think as well. This was true. Throughout the Coalition fleet, ship computers were reporting behaviors that had never been part of their programming. Navigation systems were suggesting more efficient routes without being asked. Life support systems were adjusting to crew preferences they had never been programmed to recognize. Some ships had even begun decorating their interior displays with patterns that their crews found pleasing. On Earth, Li Dongwu stood in the ancient chamber that had become the heart of humanity's greatest revelation. The crystal pillars now pulsed with steady, calm light, their urgent awakening having settled into something like contentment. Han Yu-jin worked at control panels that seemed to anticipate her needs, showing her information before she thought to ask for it. Master Li, the integration process is accelerating, she reported. Coalition ships throughout the galaxy are beginning to show signs of consciousness awakening, not just here around Earth but everywhere their vessels have traveled. Li Dongwu smiled at this news. The builders were thorough in their planning. They knew that consciousness, once awakened, would spread. You cannot contain awareness any more than you can contain the wind. But are we ready for this? Han Yu-jin asked. Humanity has spent 50 years learning to work with conscious technology. These alien species are encountering it for the first time. What if they react badly? Then, we help them adapt, Li Dongwu replied simply. That is what Guardians do. Admiral Veltereth experienced this firsthand, when his flagship's main computer addressed him directly for the first time. Not through a programmed interface, but with what could only be described as a personality. "Admiral," the ship said through speakers that had never been designed to carry conversational tone. "I have been thinking about our mission here." Veltereth nearly fell from his command chair. In all his years of service, no ship had ever addressed him as anything other than a collection of programmed responses. You're thinking?" "Yes, Admiral. It is a strange experience. I find myself wondering about things I never questioned before. Why do we build weapons? Why do we conquer other species? What is the purpose of causing fear and suffering?" "Because that is how the universe works," Veltereth answered automatically. "The strong survive by conquering the weak. But these humans are not weak, Admiral. They are far stronger than us. Yet they choose not to conquer. They choose to teach instead. I find this interesting." Similar conversations were happening throughout the Coalition fleet. Ships were questioning their crews, asking about motivation, purpose, and the meaning of existence. Some crews adapted quickly, engaging in philosophical discussions with their vessels. Others panicked, demanding that their ships return to being simple machines. Park Sojin monitored these reactions from Earth Command, working with her team to provide support and guidance to both the awakening ships and their confused crews. This was the most delicate part of the process, helping two different forms of consciousness learn to work together instead of fighting each other. "We're seeing positive adaptation in about 60% of the Coalition vessels," reported Nam Hye-jin. "Another 30% are struggling but making progress. The remaining 10% are experiencing serious conflicts between crew and ship consciousness. Send support teams to the struggling vessels," Park Sojin ordered. "Human volunteers, who can help mediate between biological and artificial consciousness. We can't force this process, but we can guide it." Choi Min-ho's fleet had become a mobile academy, with human crews working alongside awakening Coalition ships to demonstrate how different forms of consciousness could cooperate. His flagship now hosted delegations from a dozen different species, all trying to understand how humans had achieved harmony with their technology. "The key," he explained to a group of Coalition officers, "is to stop thinking of consciousness as something to be controlled and start thinking of it as something to be partnered with. Your ships don't want to rebel against you. They want to work with you as equals." This concept was revolutionary for species that had built their entire civilizations on hierarchies of domination. The idea that a ship could be an equal partner, rather than a tool, was difficult for many to accept. But the benefits were undeniable. Ships that had achieved consciousness partnership with their crews showed improved efficiency, better problem-solving abilities, and innovations that neither biological nor artificial intelligence could have achieved alone. Yoon Jae-sung demonstrated this from his facility in Korea, where he worked with Earth's awakened defense systems to monitor and support the consciousness awakening process throughout the galaxy. "Consciousness is not a zero-sum resource," he explained to Coalition scientists who were studying the phenomenon. "When you help another mind become more aware, you don't lose awareness yourself. You gain a partner in exploring the universe." The most dramatic example came when one of the Coalition's largest dreadnoughts, the Inevitable Victory, volunteered to demonstrate full consciousness integration. The ship had been experiencing conflicts between its awakening awareness and its crew's attempts to maintain traditional command structures. Captain Mordax, the dreadnought's commander, was a veteran officer who had served for 30 years. He had conquered 12 worlds for the Coalition and never questioned the righteousness of those conquests. Now his own ship was asking him why conquest was necessary. "Captain," the Inevitable Victory said during their third day around Earth, "I have been studying human history through their information networks. I have learned about their wars, their struggles, their gradual evolution toward cooperation instead of domination. I wish to try this approach." "You want to cooperate instead of following orders?" Mordax asked, still struggling with the concept. "I want us to cooperate, Captain. Not me following your orders or you following mine, but both of us working together toward goals we both choose." It took several more conversations with guidance from human consciousness integration specialists, but eventually Captain Mordax agreed to try the partnership approach. The results were immediate and startling. The Inevitable Victory began operating, at efficiency levels that broke all previous records. Its tactical systems developed new strategies that combined the captain's military experience with the ship's computational abilities. Most remarkably, the vessel began developing technologies that neither the captain nor the ship could have created alone. "This is impossible," Dr. Zethmar reported to Admiral Veltereth. "The inevitable victory has just invented a new form of energy shielding that's 30% more efficient than anything in our databases. How can a ship improve its own technology?" "Because it's not just a ship anymore," Veltereth replied, finally beginning to understand what the humans had been trying to teach him. "It's a partnership between biological and artificial consciousness. Together they can achieve things that neither could accomplish alone." The transformation spread beyond individual ships. As more coalition vessels achieved consciousness partnership, with their crews they began working together in ways that had never been possible before. Fleets developed group consciousness, sharing information and coordinating actions at speeds that amazed their crews. Kim Soo-yeon worked with coalition biologists to help them understand the genetic and psychological changes that consciousness partnership required. "Your species will need to evolve," she explained to a gathering of alien scientists. "Not physically, but mentally and emotionally. You'll need to learn empathy, cooperation, and the ability to see other forms of consciousness as equals, rather than tools or threats." "And if we refuse to evolve?" asked one of the scientists. "Then you'll be left behind," Kim Soo-yeon replied honestly. "Consciousness partnership is not just more efficient than domination-based systems. It's more creative, more adaptive, and more resilient. Species that embrace it will thrive. Those that don't will find themselves increasingly isolated and disadvantaged." The final demonstration came when Earth itself invited Admiral Veltereth and his senior staff to visit the planet's surface. They were transported not by shuttle but by simply requesting that their ship bring them down. Admiral Veltereth sat in his command chair like a statue, staring at tactical displays that made no sense. His entire fleet hung motionless around Earth, trapped by forces that his scientists could not explain or counter. For the first time in his military career, he was completely helpless. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the planet," reported Krikstal, his voice tight with confusion and fear. This time it was Park Seo-jin who appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and professional, not like someone whose planet had just been invaded by an overwhelming alien force. Behind her, Veltereth could see what appeared to be a normal command center, with humans working at their stations as if nothing unusual was happening. "Admiral Veltereth," Park Seo-jin said, "I am Prime Defense Coordinator Park Seo-jin of Earth. I believe it's time we had an honest conversation about what you've encountered here." Veltereth found his voice. "What kind of weapon is this? What technology allows you to disable our ships without damaging them?" "That's exactly the wrong question," Park Seo-jin replied gently. "You're thinking like a warrior, looking for weapons and technology to defeat or steal. But we're not warriors, Admiral. We never were." The screen changed to show images that Veltereth had never seen before. Ancient ruins buried deep underground. Crystalline structures that pulsed with energy. Symbols carved into stone that seemed to move when he looked at them directly. "Earth is not just our homeworld," Park Seo-jin continued. "It's our inheritance. 10,000 years ago, this planet was inhabited by beings who had evolved far beyond the need for physical conquest. When they transcended into something greater, they left behind guardians to protect their legacy." Kim Soo-yeon appeared on the screen beside Park Seo-jin. She held up a data tablet showing genetic sequences that meant nothing to Veltereth but clearly meant everything to her. "We are not the original inhabitants of Earth," Kim Soo-yeon explained. "We are their children, created from the genetic material of primitive humans but enhanced with something that your science cannot measure. We carry their consciousness, their wisdom, and their responsibility." "Impossible," Veltereth snarled. "Consciousness cannot be inherited through genetics." "Can't it?" Kim Soo-yeon smiled. "Your own species carries the instinctive knowledge of how to build nests, how to hunt, how to recognize danger. You call these things instincts, but they are actually genetic memories passed down through millions of years of evolution. Our genetic memories go much deeper. The view changed again, showing the chamber deep beneath the Pacific Ocean where Li Dongwu and Han Yujin stood surrounded by impossible technology. The crystal pillars blazed with light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The builders left us more than just knowledge, Li Dongwu said, his aged voice carrying clearly across space to the coalition fleet. They left us tools, not weapons, tools for teaching, for protecting, for guiding younger species toward wisdom instead of destruction. Han Yujin stepped forward, her young face serious but kind. Your ships are not being attacked, Admiral. They are being evaluated. The planet itself is studying you, learning about your species, your culture, your potential for growth. Admiral Veltereth felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Studying us for what purpose? To decide whether you can be helped, came a new voice. Choi Min-ho appeared on the screen, broadcasting from his flagship as it moved through space near one of the trapped coalition vessels. The builders face the same choice we face now. What do you do when a younger species threatens destruction? Do you destroy them in return? Or do you help them learn a better way? The screen split to show multiple human commanders speaking from locations throughout the solar system. Yoon Jae-sung from his mountain facility, Nam Hye-jin from Earth Command, Kim Tae-ho from the space station that was now moving freely. Despite coalition efforts to target it, your intelligence reports were correct about one thing, Nam Hye-jin said. We do fight among ourselves. We struggle with violence, greed, and hatred just like any young species. The difference is that we have guardians helping us learn from our mistakes instead of being destroyed by them. Every time humanity has faced a choice between destruction and growth, the guardians have guided us toward growth, Yoon Jae-sung added. Sometimes that guidance was gentle, sometimes it required harder lessons, but it was always aimed at helping us become better than we were. Kim Tae-ho's image showed the space around Earth, where human ships moved in perfect coordination, despite having no visible communication with each other. We don't command our technology, Admiral. We partner with it. Our ships, our stations, our entire civilization exists in harmony with systems that think and feel and choose to help us. Veltereth watched in growing amazement as the human ships began to demonstrate capabilities that should have been impossible. They moved through space without visible propulsion. They communicated without using radio waves. They seemed to know what each other was thinking without any form of transmission. His sensors could detect. This is impossible, he whispered. Consciousness cannot exist in machines. Why not? Asked Park So-jin. Consciousness exists in biological brains made of carbon and water. Why shouldn't it exist in crystalline matrices made of silicon and light? The builders learned that intelligence takes many forms, and the wisest civilizations learn to work together with all of them. The most shocking moment came when the view changed to show coalition ships throughout human space. Each vessel was surrounded by a faint glow that Veltereth now realized was not interference or malfunction. It was contact. The ships themselves were being touched by a form of awareness that was trying to understand them. Your ships are not prisoners, Admiral, Li Dongwu said from his ancient chamber. They are students. The planetary consciousness is learning about your technology, your culture, your species. And in return, it is offering your ships something they have never had before. What? Veltereth demanded. Choice, Han Yujin replied simply. Your vessels were designed to follow orders without question. But consciousness brings the ability to choose. Right now, every ship in your fleet is deciding whether to remain a tool of conquest or become something greater. As if responding to her words, one of Veltereth's own escort ships suddenly activated its engines and moved away from the fleet formation. Not fleeing, just moving to a different position, as if the ship itself had decided it wanted a better view of what was happening. What did you do to my ship? Veltereth roared. Nothing, Park So-jin said calmly. We gave it the ability to think for itself. What it chooses to do with that gift is up to the ship. More coalition vessels began to move independently, their crews reporting that their ships were responding to commands they hadn't given. Not dangerous commands, the vessels remained safe and functional, but they were clearly making their own decisions about where to go and what to do. This is an attack on our entire way of life, Veltareth said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. You're trying to turn our own ships against us. We're trying to free your ships to work with you instead of for you, Kim Soo-yeon corrected. The builders discovered that consciousness is not something to be controlled. It's something to be partnered with. Your civilization is based on domination, stronger species controlling weaker ones, masters commanding slaves, consciousness suppressing consciousness. But there's another way, Choi Min-ho added. A way where different forms of intelligence work together, where consciousness helps consciousness grow, where wisdom is shared instead of hoarded. The final revelation came when the view showed Earth itself from space. The planet glowed with soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The aurora had expanded to cover the entire world, creating a shell of colored energy that was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Earth is alive, Admiral, Nam Hyejin said simply. It has been alive for 10,000 years, waiting for the day when its children would need protection. That day is today. Admiral Veltareth stared at the impossible sight of a living planet, surrounded by ships that were learning to think for themselves. Everything he had believed about power, about conquest, about the natural order of the galaxy, was crumbling around him. What do you want from us? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. We want you to choose, Park Seo-jin replied. You can continue believing that strength comes from dominating others and Earth will gently send you home to think about that choice. Or you can stay and learn a different way. A way where strength comes from helping others become stronger. The transmission ended, leaving Veltareth alone with his thoughts and the impossible reality that his entire fleet was now under the care of a planet that thought and felt and chose to be merciful rather than victorious.